Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. Welcome to episode 95 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 95. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, and the good and the bad. With that, Zig, I will let you take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Awesome. Today we're doing 5 more little-known sci-fi films.
All right, let's see if I know any of these.
Okay, I think you probably know some of them. The first one is Slipstream.
Nope.
Slipstream is a 1989 science fiction film directed by Steve Linsberger, who had previously directed the cult classic 1982 science fiction film Tron. It was produced by Gary Kurtz, best known for his collaboration with George Lucas on the first 2 Star Wars films and American Graffiti. Slipstream reunited Kurtz with his Star Wars lead, Mark Hamill, who plays the bad guy in this movie.
Oh, cool.
It featured alongside Bill Paxton, Bob Peck, and Kitty Aldridge, with cameo appearances from Robbie Coltrane, Ben Kingsley, and F. Murray Abraham.
Wow.
Yeah. The thing was, this was kind of an indie movie, but it was like an indie sci-fi movie. So all the little indie sci-fi guys were all over this thing, and it really kind of didn't make a big splash.
Mm-hmm.
So how it starts as a voiceover sets the scene. The time is after the harmonic convergence, when drastic climate change has swept away civilization as we know it. A vast wind current, the slipstream, encircles the globe, and a few scattered settlements of survivors attempt to keep human life going. So Slipstream was the second feature Gary Kurtz made as a producer after splitting with his former creative partner, George Lucas. Kurt's early productions credits include the film Chandler and Monty Hellman's cult road movie Two Lane Blacktop. He then began his hugely successful collaboration with George Lucas by producing Lucas's commercial breakthrough, the low-budget American Graffiti in 1973, which went on to become one of the most profitable films of all time. Kurtz then worked in second unit director and played a major creative role in the first two Star Wars films. But the partnership ended acrimoniously in the interval between Empire and the third installment of the series Return of the Jedi, when Lucas and Kurtz fell out over the creative commercial direction of the franchise. Following the acrimonious split with Lucas, Kurtz produced the hit fantasy film The Dark Crystal in 1982. Afterwards, he acted as executive producer for the fantasy film Return to Oz in 1985, which was not a commercial success. He evidently hoped that he could recapture his earlier success in science fiction with Slipstream, which co-starred popular actors from two of the major sci-fi franchises of the period, Mark Hamill from Star Wars and Bill Paxton from Aliens. However, in spite of the many prominent names involved, including Kurtz, the cast, and distinguished Hollywood composer Elmer Bernstein, Slipstream proved to be a disastrous financial and critical flop. Its failure reportedly drove Kurtz into bankruptcy.
Wow.
Slipstream was filmed in Cappadocia, Turkey, Ireland, and Pinewood Studios. Which Pinewood is where they, do a lot of the James Bond stuff. Things like that. And the stuff in Cappadocia, Turkey, they basically filmed around the areas where the people build their houses into the sandstone cliffs, which they've done for thousands of years. People still do it because it's cheap. You basically, you buy this section of land and then you dig it out with a shovel because it's real soft, right? It's real soft to dig, but it's sturdy for your house. Then you have them run electric and pipes and everything and lime wash it. There's still people that live in these basically sandstone cliffs as apartments because it's cheaper than building a house. And they're beautiful. But yeah, part of the film takes place there because they wanted to give it kind of an otherworldly feel. And honestly, they kind of look like ant-mounds. But I mean, it really gives that effect. Slipstream had a short cinema run in the United Kingdom where it was considered a flop, and Australia where the film grossed just $66,000 during its entire theatrical run.
Wow. Yeah,
the film was never released in theaters in North America and enjoyed only moderate VHS sales. The film was released on videocassette by MCEG Virgin Home Entertainment in 1990. Several budget DVD copies of Slipstream have been released. Fans awaiting a director's cut have been disappointed after producer Gary Kurtz said in an interview that the script was originally much more violent, but these violent scenes, which would have made the plot more coherent, were never filmed. So, this film basically put Gary Kurtz out of business for a long time. He came back and did some other stuff, but yeah, it was not well received. But in the sort of cult film circles, it's really, really good. It's a quiet movie. I mean, for as actiony as it purports to be, and it's all about flying. People with balloons or little ultralights or airplanes and stuff like that. Because everybody takes advantage of this slipstream, which is basically like the Gulf Stream that runs all across the world. And they use it like a freeway. It's really cool. It's a cool idea. Bill Paxton's a little over the top.
He can be.
I think they meant him to be that way. They kind of wanted what was his character in Aliens? Hicks. Yeah. They wanted the Hicks character, and he kind of plays that. Mark Hamill plays this ultra religious sort of FBI manhunter character, a la Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. Oh, he's just great. Mark Hamill's just phenomenal. And Bob Peck plays this, well, what we assume is a murderer on the run. What he was an android who was created by this person, and the android killed the person to escape slavery. Um, but you don't find that out at the beginning of the film. It kind of follows the process. It's brilliant and beautiful, and I don't know why it doesn't get more play. But again, it didn't do really well. It could be a little more actiony. It's a little slow in places, especially where they're showing some of these unusual and creative balloon designs, because they got these artists who build these really weird out of this world hot air balloons. They're in it a lot. They're featured a lot in it, as well as these little ultralight planes, which are just cool. But that is about it for Slipstream, other than it's pretty readily available. I want to say it's on one of the free sites because I just watched it the other day. And I forgot really how good Mark Hamill and Bob Peck are in it. The next film is Space Hunter: Adventure into the Forbidden Zone.
Yes, I know this one.
It's a 1983 American-Canadian space western. The film stars Peter Strauss, Molly Ringwald, Ernie Hudson, Andrea Markovici, and Michael Ironside. The film's executive producer was Ivan Reitman. It was directed by Lamont Johnson. The film's music score was composed by Elmer Bernstein. When the film was originally released in theaters, it was shown in a polarized over-under 3D format.
And I saw this in 3D.
So did I.
Yeah, I saw this. I saw this in the theaters. This was a 50-cent double feature Tuesday.
Yes. Yes. I want to say I saw it too. And there was a fantasy film that came out about the same time that they would double bill this with. But I can't remember the name of the fantasy film. I'll find out. I'm going to find out and look that bad boy up, because I think that's something I need to go back and watch. But yeah, this was a 3D film, although you can watch it not in 3D and it's fine. The film did become part of a 3D film revival craze in the early 80s, being widely released after Coming at You. The film is about maybe Coming at You is the other one. I'll check it out. The film is about a bounty hunter who goes on a mission to rescue 3 women stranded on a brutal planet and meets a vagrant teenage girl along the way. The film was announced in February of 1982. It was one of a number of 3D movies made in the wake of the success of Coming at You. Ernie McNabb, the 3D designer, said the effects would enable the audience to really feel space. Producer Don Carmody said, "We never stop to pop popcorn in your face. We do have one scene where laser beams and flame blasters are bombarding the audience fast and furious, but these effects occur during a battle scene in a pure valley." Ernie Hudson says when he was first cast, he was told Jeff Bridges would play Wolf. Then Peter Strauss was cast in the role. What did you think about this one? You've seen it.
I love Space Hunter. I have a special place in my heart for this one. It was a fun movie.
Yes, it was. It was kind of serious, but there's also a lot of weird popcorn stuff going on.
I didn't think it was really serious.
So basically the idea of this film is there's this planet where a plague broke out like 30 years ago. They sent these 3 scientists down to battle and combat the plague. Well, instead of battling and combating the plague, they started experimenting on people and made these weird genetic mutations. And that's basically what rules the planet, including Michael Ironside, who experimented on himself and made himself into this genetic cyborg freak who is basically immortal. And he rules the planet under the name Overdog. But there's all kinds of crazy stuff in here. There's like a dragon, which they never explained whether that was a human who was experimented on or whether it was a native species of the planet. Filming started under the title Adventures in the Creep Zone in October 1982. The original director was John LaFleur, who had co-written the original story and previously worked with producer Don Carmody. Parts of the film were shot in Cane Creek, Bull Canyon, in the Colorado River, Potash, Lower Schaefer, Trail Potash, Settling Ponds, Gray Hills, U.S. Highway 91, and the area south of Canyonlands Airport. It was also shot partially in Vancouver. After 2 weeks of filming, LaFleur and several of the other crew members were fired, reportedly because Columbia was unhappy with the progress of the film. His replacement was Lamont Johnson. Strauss said this led to changes to his character. There were attempts to make him a little less tough and a little more gentle and responsive to the girl Nikki. Some of his grittiness in the earlier versions was replaced with a notion of more of a gentleness. Ernie Hudson said it was difficult because things were always changing. We changed the script entirely when Lamont came in. We got a new script, a new everything. I ended up really liking Lamont, but it was very confusing, especially in the beginning. Molly Ringwald said, I was always attracted to the character. The script was pretty, but I figured that maybe I could change the dialogue when I got there. As it turned out, they were desperate to change the dialogue. I was quite relieved when Lamont showed up and said, this is awful. Let's change all of this. The script was rewritten a lot. There was a train which started out as evil and wound up being good. People who were supposed to be friends ended up being enemies. It was confusing. I was lucky, though. All my material was improved. Hudson felt the movie was a real stretch for Strauss, and all the confusion didn't help. Wolf was a wonderful Harrison Ford type, but that's not Peter. An actor has to take his own way and do something totally different. Unfortunately, you're working with people who want the Harrison Ford thing, and they want it from you. Peter had to carry his first big feature through all of that confusion, and it was difficult for him.
Yeah, and I really thought that they were kind of trying to make this character Han Solo.
Yes. Oh, most assuredly. He was a smuggler slash a bounty hunter slash scrapyard guy, you know?
Right.
And he had a robot sidekick who you didn't know was a robot until they shot her. Although I watched it recently, while he's talking to her, she kind of goes down, like she stops working for a second, and he has to go back and reset her on the back of her shoulder. I was like, oh yeah, they did point that she was a robot. Because when I was like 10 when this movie came out, that just floored me. I was like, oh no, they shot Chalmers. Oh, Chalmers is a robot. In regards to the 3D aspect, Reitman said in 2015, we had to have two cameras. We just shot it in what is called native 3D, and it was hell. And there was no screens that you could show it in. That was not really a practical idea in 1981. The film's music was done by Elmer Bernstein, who later called the film too rushed. The studio's only concern was getting it to the box office to make quick money, riding an anticipated lucrative 3D boom. The producers didn't want to fool around. They were looking for a more conventional approach, so I wrote it like a Western with lots of straightforward heroics and conventional orchestrations, except for the one bit with Overdog. The film's advertising emphasized the 3D aspects. Columbia released Space Hunter on May 20th, 1983, timed to be a week before Return of the Jedi. The film took $7 million in its first week. However, ticket sales dropped sharply. I wonder why. The film ended up grossing $16.5 million in the United States box office. Ernie Hudson said he felt that people went to the movie and expected to see something different. If you don't have something really special and different, people just ask why they should spend money to see this thing. I don't think Space Hunter was daring enough. It wasn't really risky. We never lived up to our own publicity. It wasn't a bad story as movies go, and with Peter in it, I think people expected Space Hunter to be a serious film, and it wasn't serious at all. When the film went mostly ignored in the U.S. box office, it did find success on home video, becoming the 10th best-selling video cassette of 1983.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was really big on video. It didn't do real well in the theaters, but, you know, it was one of those things that, again, you know, People with home video bought it and watched it incessantly. This and Slipstream. I had a copy of both of these movies. Sorry, I had to take a drink of coffee. My next film is The Dungeon Master, originally known as Rage War, The Challenge of Excalibrate, or Digital Knight. Did you ever see Dungeon Master?
No, I haven't seen this one.
This one right now, this one's hard to find streaming. I was able to watch it about 2 months ago, and it was readily available. It was on 2 free sites. So I think it'll probably pop back up here pretty soon. Maybe by the time of this release, you'll be able to go out and see it. This film is not a serious film. This is a goofy sci-fi adventure movie, but I kind of love it because I saw it in the theaters, because the advertising for the film was see 10 films all in one, because it was 10 little vignettes that kind of tied together. And it was actually really well done. But it was kind of goofy. It's a 1984 American anthology fantasy film produced by Charles Band and is split up into 7 distinct story segments. 8 if you consider the narrative effect around the 7 small segments. I said 10, sorry, it was actually 8. Each written and directed by a different person. Dave Allen, Band, directed Band. John Carl Batchelor, Stephen Ford, Peter Moonigan, Ted Nicolau, and Rosemary Turco. The film's theme was influenced by the popularity of Disney's 1982 film Tron and the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Principal photography began in 1983, but the film was not completed until 1984. The film features an appearance by the heavy metal band Wasp. And yes, in the film, they play Wasp, I Fuck Like a Beast. Which is the one song that everybody wants to hear and all the parents were outraged by. The film is known for the line of dialogue, I reject your reality and substitute my own, which was used quite a bit in Mythbusters. Adam Savage says this a lot. A sequel to the movie was shot and edited in 1988, but never completed. So the story, I say the story, I'll kind of loosely give an explanation of it. So Paul Bradford, played by Geoffrey Byron, is a skilled computer programmer who lives with his girlfriend, Gwen, Leslie Wing, and Excalibrate, a quasi-sentient personal computer that Paul programmed and which he interacts with via a neural interface built into his glasses. Gwen is jealous of Paul's unusually close relationship with Excalibrate, to whom Paul has given a female voice, and fears that this relationship will be destroyed by Paul's reliance on Excalibrate for his various day-to-day activities. One night, Paul and Gwen are both transported to a hellish realm presided over Mestima, played by Richard Mall.
Bull.
Yes.
Bull Shannon.
Yes, Bull
Night
Shannon.
Court.
An ancient demonic sorcerer who has spent millennia seeking a worthy opponent with whom to do battle. Having long defeated his enemies with magic, Mestima has become intrigued with technology and wishes to pit his skill against Paul's, with the winner claiming Gwen. Arming Paul with a portable version of Excalibrate on his wrist, Mestima begins transporting Paul into various scenarios in which he must defeat various opponents. Most of the challenges involve Paul using his Excalibrate wristband to shoot people, monsters, and objects with laser beams. After Paul completes Mestima's various challenges, the two engage in a final battle, which takes the form of a fist fight in which Paul kills Mestima by throwing him into a pit of lava. After Mestima dies, Paul and Gwen are transported back to their house, where Gwen expresses her acceptance of Excalibrate and suggests that she and Paul get married. Now, the segments are called Stone Canyon Giant, Heavy Metal, Demons of the Dead, Slasher, Cave Beast, Desert Pursuit, and Ice Gallery. So Stone Canyon Giant was directed by Dave Allen. There is a giant stone monkey statue that chases this guy through a canyon, and it's all very Ray Harryhausen. It's probably the most intricate set unit they use in the film. Then there's Heavy Metal, directed by Charles Band, which was the bit with Wasp, where the band is basically an evil band, and he has to rescue his girl from this King or St. George's Cross, where she's about to be executed during a live stage show. Demons of the Dead by John Carl Buechler, where he's basically fighting zombies. Slasher by Stephen Ford, where he has to stop a serial killer from killing his girlfriend. Cave Beast by Peter Manoogian, which has my favorite character in the film, Rat Spit.
Nice.
I think it's a great name. Rat Spit. Yeah.
Nice.
It's basically a really nice puppet work.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to fight these beasts and, take over the cave domain from Rat Spit. Desert Pursuit, which is a Mad Max style race with some really cool cars. Including, I want to say, the vehicle that they use is based on the vehicle from Space Hunter. The little rover. It looks really similar. Beautiful car work. That's the only one they don't win. They actually end up in a crash. They take the last bad guy out, but they also crack up themselves. So technically they don't win that one. And then Ice Gallery, where there's a gallery of horrors that are frozen and they slowly come to life and he has to fight them. So that's about it for the Dungeon Master, other than once it's available again, and it should be here pretty soon because it was readily available just a couple of months ago. Check it out. There is an extra scene at the beginning where the main character is running through a misty forest, and he meets up with this woman, and they have this weird, torrid love affair, and then he wakes up and he's in bed with his girlfriend. They took that scene out for the American version of it. I have seen versions where it's still in there. It really doesn't fit with the rest of the film. So that's why most people take it out.
Yeah.
But it was filmed. It gave it because there's nudity in it, it gave it a rated R, where usually this movie is just PG-13 because it's, for action. I think they basically wanted to make a rated R version and a PG-13 version. And when they released it over here, they just released the PG-13 version. England has the rated R version. That's what's standard. Also, that's why it's called Rage War as well. That's what they call it over there. But over here, we call it Dungeon Master. Richard Mole is incredible in that film. He's just this creepy wizard with this long, slick back hair. So I'm assuming he made it while he was taking a break from Night Court.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
in Night Court, his head is shaved.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's his hair because I've seen him with hair and it looks like his hair.
Sure.
It could have been a wig, but it's fairly long, and he was already doing Night Court by this point. So
In 84?
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he made this before he got the gig in Night Court.
Maybe because he played the bad guy or the evil guy in several movies.
Oh yeah,
And he always had jet black hair.
Jet black hair, slick back.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was him. And honestly, for a long time, like I saw this movie in the theaters and I just loved it. And then I would watch Night Court, and it took me forever to put the two and two together because he doesn't actually look like Bull. It's like, oh crap, that's Bull. My next film is one that I've watched several times because Lorelai loves it. I was laying her down to go to sleep one night, and I thought she was asleep, so I put this movie on, and she woke up and started watching it. She was like 3 or 4 and she just loved it. And now we watch it, once every few months because she just thinks it's a great movie. The name of that film is Runaway
Okay.
with Tom Selleck
Oh, I
and Gene
vaguely remember.
Simmons. Yeah.
Yes, I vaguely remember this one.
Yeah. Which is weird because this movie's a little slow. This is a serious film. This movie is a little slow. Um, Except for the action scenes are really, really punchy, but you don't get very many of them. And everything else leading up to the action is really, really slow. So I'm really shocked she liked it, but it's like one of her favorite movies. So we watch this one every once in a while, and she told me I needed to do something about Runaway. I need to talk about Runaway. So I thought now's a good time because it's kind of a lesser well-known science fiction film, even though it should have been big. Runaway is a 1984 American science fiction action film written and directed by Michael Crichton, starring Tom Selleck, Gene Simmons, Cynthia Rhodes, and Kirstie Alley. Selleck portrays a police officer assigned to track down dangerous robots, while Simmons is a scientist who hopes to profit from his manipulation of robots. The film was a box office disappointment and received mixed reviews. So,
Sounds like a low budget Blade Runner.
it's not. They actually threw some money at this thing. But it takes place in modern times. It's not super futuristic. It's supposed to be like 10 years in the future. Because back in 1984, they predicted we would have robots doing menial tasks everywhere, but not androids. The robots that do menial tasks are realistic. They're like construction robots. The ones that build the auto parts and things like that. All the robots look like that. And they're commonplace. It's a really interesting story. So in the near future, robots are commonplace and part of everyday life, like any other electrical appliance. So like, refrigerators, stoves, things like that. They're just prone to malfunction. When a robot malfunctions, it could pose a threat to people or property. Such robots are known as runaways. Since they are more dangerous than the average machine, they are handled by a specific division of the police department trained in robotics, the Runaway Squad. However, the Runaway Squad is treated as easy and unexciting assignments, and they're often ridiculed. Like the opening scene, Tom Selleck's character gets a new partner. And the first thing they have to do is go out to this cornfield and go basically shut down a robot that's supposed to be pulling caterpillars off of corn. That's its job. It's gone crazy and is tearing up the cornfield. So they have to go and pick it up and carry it out. They get a little, if the robot malfunctions, it kind of goes a little haywire, but it's not really dangerous other than, they kind of hurt themselves falling all over it. This changes when they find themselves handling a new threat, the first robotic homicide. They're investigating a household robot that murdered a family with a kitchen knife and a handgun. Jack discovers strange integrated circuits, which not only override the robot's safety features, but also direct it to attack and kill humans. These circuits are not hacked chips, but created from a series of master templates, enabling them to be mass produced. So while investigating some of this, they come across a scientist whose family was connected with the mob named Luther. Jack Ramsey and the new Officer Thompson find Jackie Rogers, who was once Luther's lover, played by Kirstie Alley, and Luther is Gene Simmons. She double-crossed him and stole the circuit templates, intended to sell them herself. She is scared because she believes Luther will stop at nothing to kill her. When they create a ruse to transfer Jackie to safety, Luther attacks the police convoy with robotic smart bombs. They discover the bombs are zeroing in on a bug in Jackie's purse. They throw the bag out the window before a bomb reaches the car. So they're little remote controlled wedge shaped bombs driving down the street, a la Shadowrun. That scene's amazing. The film was written and directed by Michael Crichton, who says he deliberately made it vague how far into the future the film was set. If you want my worldview, I think it's about a year ahead, he said. I'm not surprised it was written by Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is a bit of a, how do I put this? Technophobe?
Right.
Yeah, that's where he lives. I don't think the dude is actually a technophobe, but that's what he writes.
Mm-hmm.
Crichton said the film is a cautionary tale about technology, but an updated police story with every cliche turned slightly on its ear. This is a movie, at least in part, about the difference between people and machines. We tried very hard to keep perspective. Machines are so visually interesting that a lot of times they threaten to take over a film, which is why he made them industrial robots. Like there's this one industrial robot in a construction site that is throwing 50-pound bags of cement off an 8-story building. It's throwing them in the same place. It's very dangerous, but you know, it's really easy to get around because it's basically stacking these things and just throwing them off the edge of the building. So they have to go up, turn it on. The TV stars Tom Selleck, or the film stars, TV stars Tom Selleck. I'm very sorry. He had become a star on Magnum PI. Selleck later said with the TV series, I don't have the luxury of taking on a lot of projects. So when I got offered a movie and the timing was right, I said yes. I keep thinking if I don't say yes, then everyone will go away. And being a fan of Michael Crichton helped because I'm really very nervous doing this. I need my confidence built as much as anybody. It's a strange business. I like to grow in my parts. This was a risk in some ways. The film also marked the first feature film acting role for rock star Gene Simmons. The only film he'd done prior to that was The Kiss Meets the Phantom in the Park, which he really wasn't in that much. Simmons had been interested in acting for a while and had been studying since 1981. He turned down a TV series which wanted to exploit his Kiss fame as well as parts in Flashdance and Dr. Detroit because he wasn't interested in musicals or comedy. He wanted to start out in something serious. He said he understood brooding characters more than he did splashy people. He was offered the part when meeting Crichton and did not have to read it at all. Gene Simmons says he didn't see Dr. Luther as evil. He said, but a deadly animal who knows when someone gets in his way. Crichton didn't want me to memorize a script or talk to my acting coach. His direction was don't be afraid to try different things. Filming took place from the 29th of May to August in 1984 in Vancouver, while Selleck was on break from Magnum PI. Mercury topazes were used for the police cruisers in the film. Jerry Goldsmith composed the original musical score, which was the composer's first all-electronic soundtrack. And with a multi-million-dollar budget, big-name actors, and world-famous author as both writer and director, Runaway was planned as 1984's major science fiction draw. However, it was overshadowed by The Terminator, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, 2010, the year we made Contact. And this was a box office disappointment. Gene Simmons is incredible in this movie because he's not evil. He's just, he knows what he wants and he gets what he wants. He even has a great death scene with the little spider droids that he made. They have a little needle in them, or actually not little, it's pretty big, that they inject into you and inject acid, which is also flammable. So they inject the acid, they blow up, and you catch on fire while you're dying from acid. It's a horrible way to go. He gets turned on by those little the little spider droids. But again, this is one that I've seen many, many, many times. I love Gene Simmons. I love Kirstie Alley. I love Tom Selleck in it. Have you seen this one?
No, I remember it, but I've never seen it.
Okay. This one is available. It usually vacillates between like HBO Max and one of the free sites, either Freevee or Tubi or Pluto or, one of those free sites. Um, but yeah, we watch it all the time. Um, at least once every couple of months, just because it's like, hey, let's watch Outland. Okay, we'll pop some popcorn and watch it. And everybody else will walk through the house. It's like, you guys are watching this again? Hey, we like it. Or not Outland, Runaway. My next film is Outland. That's about it for Runaway. Other than you should get out and check it out. If nothing else, to see Gene Simmons really kind of tear it up. Outland, our next film, is a 1984 science fiction thriller film written and directed by Peter Hyams and stars Sean Connery, Peter Boyle, and Francis Sternhagen. It is set on Jupiter's moon Io. It has been described as a space western and bears thematic resemblance to the 1952 film High Noon. I want to start by saying Outland is hard science fiction. A lot of people aren't as comfortable with hard science fiction as are more comfortable with like space dramas and things like, or space operas, things like that. Hard science fiction, you deal with gravity, you deal with lack of oxygen, you deal with freezing temperatures, boiling temperatures, things like that. Space sucks. Battlestar Galactica, space sucks. Outland is not immune to those things. You've seen Outland, right?
Yeah, many, 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 many years ago. I think I've probably only seen it once.
Oh my God, this movie is incredible. Federal Marshal William O'Neill is assigned to a tour of duty on the titanium ore mining outpost Con Am 27. Operating by the company Con Amalgamated on the Jovian moon of Io. Conditions on Io are difficult. Gravity is 1/6 that of Earth's with no breathable atmosphere, and the spacesuits are cumbersome with limited air. Shifts are long, but significant bonuses are paid. The general manager, Mark Shepard, boasts the productivity has broken all records since he took over. Carol, O'Neill's wife, feels she cannot raise their son Paul on Io and leaves with her child to the Jupiter space station to await a shuttle back to Earth. Tarlo, a miner, suffers an attack of stimulant psychosis. He sees spiders and rips open his spacesuit, resulting in death by explosive decompression. And they show it. It is not pleasant. Kane, another miner, enters an elevator without a spacesuit during another psychotic episode and dies from decompression. With the reluctant assistance of Dr. Lazarus, O'Neill investigates the deaths. After incidents involving a worker, Sagan, who takes a prostitute hostage and threatens to kill her with a knife, O'Neill attempts to calm the man while Montone, his sergeant, sneaks in via air ducts and kills Sagan with a shotgun. O'Neill and Lazarus discover that Sagan has traces of polydichloric euthymol, a powerful amphetamine-type drug in his bloodstream, which would allow the miners to work continuously for days at a time until they burn out. And turn psychotic after approximately 10 months of use. O'Neill uncovers a drug distribution ring run by a corrupt Shepard and sanctioned by now repentant Montone. So basically, the company is giving these people this amphetamine to keep them going and working, even though eventually they snap and either kill themselves or kill somebody else and themselves. Hyams recalls he wanted to do a Western. Everybody said, you can't do a Western. Westerns are dead. Nobody will do a Western. I remember thinking it was weird that this genre has endured for so long and was now just gone. But then I woke up and came to the conclusion, obviously, after other people, it was actually alive and well, but it wasn't set in the Old West, set in outer space. He wanted to make a film about the frontier, not the wonder or the glamour of it. And he wanted to do something about Dodge City and how hard life was. He wrote it. By great fortune, Sean Connery wanted to do it. And how many chances do you get to work with Sean Connery? The film was developed at Universal by Hyams and produced by Richard Roth. Universal turned it down. Then Roth, who had developed the deal at 20th Century Fox under Alan Ladd Jr., took the project to Ladd's new company, the Ladd Company. Outland was filmed with Pinewood Studios with an initial budget of $12 million. The film's working title was Io, and after the setting of the film. It was later changed because many people read it as the number 10 or low, because, typed up, it looks like 10 or low. And principal photography took place starting with the miniature models in May of 1980 and with the actors beginning in June of 1980. Post-production for the film was completed in February of 1981. Outland was pioneering for the first motion picture to use intravision, a variation on frontal projection that allows foreground, midground, and background elements to be combined in camera, as opposed to using optical processes such as blue screen matting. This enables the characters to convincingly walk around miniature sets on the mining colony. The film received mixed reviews and box office reception when it was released. It opened strongly with a little over $3 million in weekend box office receipts in the U.S. According to the New York Times, on its opening weekend, the film was sensational. And the New York's East Side, it played poorly in small cities. By platforming Outland, opening in less than 350 theaters to allow it to build an audience rather slowly, the company gambled that the movie would appeal to ticket buyers. If the picture were in trouble, it would drop off at the box office that weekend. Total estimate box office receipts in the country wound up being $17 million and $20 million, just above the $16 million budget. So it didn't lose money, but it didn't really make a whole lot. It did win some awards. The film was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Sound. And I think it won a Hugo and a Nebula as well. The Philadelphia Inquirer called it a brilliant sci-fi Western. In many ways, Hyams has made a film that is more frightening than Alien, because he surmises that space would change us very little and the real monsters we are liable to encounter will be the next spacesuit. The Washington Post said Outland writer and director Peter Hyams has adopted the plot of High Noon in an intriguing sci-fi environment, a huge titanium mine located on Io, a volcanic moon of Jupiter. But the conventions that work for High Noon break down in the high-tech atmosphere for Outland. The story seems trite and dinky. I don't think the Washington Post knows what they're talking about. If you've ever seen this film, it's one of those movies like Alien when they're in the spacesuits and you're watching it. You ever notice an Alien when they're in the spacesuits and they're breathing hard?
Right.
It's hard to breathe when you're watching it, especially on a big screen. Outland has that. Outland has that feature. And they're right. Some of those special effects, you don't realize they're walking around a miniature set. It's not like a Godzilla movie, It's hard to tell what is a set and what is a miniature because of the way they overlapped. I think Outland is brilliant, and of these 5 films, probably the best one made. What do you think about Outland?
Well, like I said, I barely remember this, because I think I only saw it once. I really couldn't give you much on this one. I remember it, but I remember seeing it, but I don't remember much about it. So unfortunately to me, I guess it's a little forgettable.
Right on. Sorry. Well, I mean, it's gritty. It's definitely more of a cop show than a science fiction show, but it's really good. And Peter Boyle is great in it too.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's not discount the Doctor, played wonderfully by Frances Sternhagen. She is just incredible in this, because she's this bitter doctor who's been basically stationed out in the middle of nowhere, who's just going to work, doing her job, and then gets caught up in this and is like, yeah, we need to do something about it. And works, she basically becomes Sean Connery's partner in this, because his actual partner is part of the setup. It's great, man. And the Mariner shotguns they run around with, when they rack them and blast them, it actually, to me, it sounds like instead of doing Foley, they basically recorded shotguns racking and being fired because it's loud. Yeah, it's just, oh, I love this one. I can't give this one enough props. But again, if you're looking for a space opera, this is not that. This is like Gattaca. You know, it's a serious science fiction film. And, you know, but if you like space westerns, oh yeah, you'd love Outland. You know, if Firefly is your thing, you need to go check out Outland because you're just going to love it. But that is about it for 5 little known sci-fi films.
Well, you made them all sound very interesting enough. I think they apparently are worth a watch.
Oh yeah, yeah. The only one that you can't go out and hit right now is Dungeon Master. And again, Dungeon Master is just fun. It's a popcorn movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not giving it a total props. They did throw some money at it. Some of the model work is really, really good. But it's not as polished as Outland.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what you're expecting, you're not going to get that. But yeah, as soon as it pops back up, definitely give that one a watch because it's fun.
Outstanding. We'll definitely appreciate that and get out and see those and tell us what you think about those.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off All That's Interesting, Atlanta Magazine, The Lineup, and Crime Capsule, and this is the story of the Corpsewood Manor Murders.
The Corpsewood Manor Murders.
Corpsewood.
Corpsewood,
like a corpse.
Corpsewood?
Yep.
Why would you stay in some place called Corpsewood Manor? It just seems like you're... Well, okay, I'm not going to say that out loud. Yeah. I don't want to be glib about the murder side.
Right. Well, in December of 1982, Charles Scudder and his partner, Joseph Odom, were brutally murdered in their Corpsewood home by 2 acquaintances in a drug-fueled robbery gone awry. Dr. Charles Scudder came from a wealthy family and worked as a professor of pharmacology at Chicago's Loyola University, which was a good job by his own definition. For more than a decade, he taught students while maintaining a fierce regimen of research. Described by those who knew him as brilliant, polished, and soft-spoken but confident, Scudder eventually grew fed up with city life and in 1976 left the luxury of his Chicago mansion in pursuit of a simpler life. As he put it, Scudder longed for an escape from taxes, light bills, gas bills, water bills, heating bills, and the helpless feeling that resulted from watching my old neighborhood disintegrate into an urban ghetto. He was worn down, complaining of unteachable students and colleagues consumed with catty university politics. His second marriage had dissolved, and his 3 children had grown up and moved out of his aging mansion on Chicago's west side. He and his longtime housekeeper and companion, Joseph Odom, were the only 2 residents left in the mansion. Odom was 12 years younger than Scudder and only had a 5th grade education, but Scudder wrote of him once in an article for Mother Earth News, quote, "He'd learned far more about the world than I had with all my degrees, and somewhere along the line he developed a talent for whipping up meals fit for a king." In 1976, Scudder received a modest inheritance after his mother died, and this he believed was the ticket to a new life far from the stresses of the city and the university. So he began searching for a new place to call home, quote, "someplace in hilly country with the glamour of 4 seasons but without super cold winters," which he wrote in Mother Earth News, extolling the virtues of moving back to the land. He wanted good supply of pure water and wood for heating and cooking, but most important, with a measure of isolation. So the 50-year-old chose an isolated spot in the North Georgia woods and began his new life. October 6, 1976 was Scudder's 50th birthday, and he celebrated by submitting his resignation letter to Loyola University, and he began immediately liquidating his home. He auctioned off the mansion's Baroque antique furniture and gave away anything with a plug since their new home would have no electricity, and he kept only a few essential items, including his golden heart. Weeks later, the house was sold, and by January of 1977, Scudder had fully dismantled his life in the heart of Chicago. He and Odom would move to Georgia, where brick by brick they would build their life together. After leaving behind most of his worldly possessions, he headed for the South with his lover, Joe Odom, constructing a new residence by hand in the depths of the forest.
I kind of figured that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did become
him and
lovers.
Joe were pretty close. Yeah.
Yes. As Scudder said, quote, "Within 2 short years, we were living in an elegant mini-castle. They called it Corpsewood Manor, named for the hauntingly bare autumn trees that dotted the area. By summer, the first floor of the all-brick castle-like structure was livable. Years later, a local investigator would tell the Atlanta Constitution that it had been built using medieval building techniques, adding there are no square corners in the whole place. To complete their country castle, they added on a 3-story chicken house. The first floor was for the poultry and food storage, the second for canned goods and the couple's pornography collection, and the third their pink room, also known as their pleasure chamber."
Oh.
Well, yeah. Scudder's gay relationship was far from the only secret he was keeping, for he was also a member of the Church of Satan. Indeed, there was much more to the soft-spoken, secretly Satanist doctor than met the eye. In the late 1970s, the church, founded less than a decade earlier by Anton LaVey, author of the Satanic Bible in San Francisco, had a small but dedicated following. Members didn't believe in an actual spiritual entity named Satan. Rather, they used the Christian notion of Satan to rally around their atheistic and hedonistic ideals. And it's unclear when he joined, but records indicate Scudder was an official member of this organization. Even at Loyola, Scudder's work was not that of a typical academic. For one, he performed government-funded experiments with mind-altering drugs like LSD, and meanwhile, he dyed his hair purple and kept a pet monkey.
Huh.
And when
he
left,
was part of Project Ultra? Very interesting.
I guess you could say that, yeah. With the LSD government-funded experiments, yeah.
Well, they were doing it all over the country. It wasn't just, we were like, oh, it was really, no, actually it wasn't secret at all. They were doing it all over the place.
I think MK Ultra is an episode that I need to do at some point.
MK Ultra?
Yeah. When he left Loyola for Corpsewood Manor, he took a few souvenirs with him, including 2 human skulls and about 12,000 doses of LSD.
What?
But now, with souvenirs in hand, Scudder was free to express his Satanism within the confines of Corpsewood Manor. The forest sanctuary was guarded by 2 mastiffs, Beelzebub and Arisnath, one named for a demon, the other for an H.P. Lovecraft character. Local legend adds that the pair also summoned a real demon to assist the dogs in guarding the house. Although they relocated for privacy, Scudder and Odom frequently made trips in nearby Tryon. After navigating a winding dirt logging road, they could be at the main highway in minutes and soon pursuing the aisles of the local Hurley grocery store. The men quickly earned a reputation as the new-to-town strangers who dressed like hippies and drove a black Jeep with a pentagram painted on the side. Curious Tryonians began making the drive up to Mountain View to investigate their strange new neighbors. As the entrance to Corpsewood property, a wooden sign greeted them with the warning, "Beware of the Thing," most likely an Addams Family reference.
Yes. Honestly, these guys sound like a whole lot of fun.
Well, some townspeople said this was evidence that Scudder had summoned a demon to guard the property, and others claimed to have seen robed figures holding seances in the woods. Fittingly, Scudder and Odom also decorated Corpsewood Manor with various Gothic paraphernalia, including the skulls that Scudder had swiped and a pink gargoyle he had bought from his old mansion. Scudder himself thought his Corpsewood Manor is more like a mausoleum, a tomb requiring care, cleaning, and endless costly repairs. Scudder also fashioned a stained glass window adorned with a prophet known as Baphomet, an important figure in the Church of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And while Scudder took his Satanism seriously, he didn't worship Satan. Instead, he was a staunch atheist who chose to celebrate the base worldly pleasures that he and other church members felt were denied them by other Abrahamic religions. And celebrate such pleasures they did. Scudder and Odom, like liked to invite guests over for wild sex parties in the Pink Room, which was filled with mattresses, candles, whips, chains, and even a logbook listing guest sexual predilections. As stories from the Pink Room emerged, rumors about the two gay devil worshippers hosting sex parties at their mountainside castle billowed through the deeply conservative community of Tryon, and it wouldn't be long until the wrong people found out. But while these acts were reportedly consensual, the Pink Room parties are the reason that on the night of December 12, 1982, Corpsewood Manor turned into a bloody murder scene. With Scudder and Odom encouraging all their deaths to indulge their every whim in a haze of sex and drugs, things were bound to implode, though perhaps no one predicted just how bloody this end would be. Among the locals that Scudder and Odom befriended were 17-year-old Kenneth Avery Brock and his roommate, 30-year-old Samuel Tony West. Information is scarce and reports vary, but at least according to Amy Petula's The Corpsewood Manor Murders in North Georgia, Brock may have had several sexual encounters with Scudder at Corpsewood. Other accounts claim that Brock had merely gotten permission from Scudder and Odom to hunt on their property, and after befriending them on their sprawling estate, came to believe they were much wealthier than they actually were. Nonetheless, some kind of relationship between Brock and West and Scudder and Odom was struck, and after several visits to the Corpsewood property, Brock told his friend and roommate Tony West about the men on the mountain. At 30, West was much older than Brock, and he had his own history of trouble. Throughout his teens and 20s, he bounced between various jails and mental institutions. According to Petula, West strongly objected to any kind of sexual activity with the older couple, though Brock may have invited it. He may have also convinced Brock that he had been taken advantage of by Scudder. Again, whether Brock had actually been taken advantage of remains unclear. Nevertheless, Brock and West decided to return to Corpsewood and rob Scudder and Odom. Brock and West suspected that Scudder and Odom were wealthy and hiding their riches inside the manor, and in the privacy of their shared trailer, Brock and West began devising a scheme to ambush and rob them. So Brock and West, with two teenagers named Joey Wells and Teresa Hudgens along for a ride, headed to Corpsewood Manor on December 12, 1982, with guns in tow. Minutes after their arrival, they were all climbing the ladder to the Pink Room, where a lantern, kerosene heater, and a couple mattresses awaited them. Initially, the four guests acted as if they were just there to hang out and accepted Scudder's offer of homemade wine, as well as a potent huffing mixture of varnish, paint thinner, and other chemicals. At some point during this drug-fueled haze, Brock got down to business, retrieving a rifle from the car and promptly shooting Odom and the two dogs. Then Brock and West did all they could to force Scudder to give up whatever money he had, and in a courtroom testimony, witnesses reported that Scudder chuckled at the sight of Brock returning with the gun. He even made a joke saying, "Bang, bang." Moments later, Brock lurched towards him, grabbed the former professor by the hair, pressed a knife against his neck, and began interrogating him about the hidden fortune. Scudder calmly claimed that they didn't keep cash at Corpsewood, and what little money they had was in a local bank. When they did eventually accept this fact, they shot Scudder 5 times in the head. Brock and West began their siege, ransacking the house and desperately searching for a hoard of cash. But finding none, they grabbed several items of little value and threw them inside of Scudder's Jeep. They hauled Scudder's golden harp to the vehicle as well, although it didn't take long to realize it wouldn't fit. The four then left the crime scene and went to the trailer where West threatened to kill the two teenagers if they told anyone about the murders. Planning to run to Mexico, Brock and West fled all the way to Mississippi, where they killed a man named Kirby Phelps as part of a robbery gone wrong on December 15th of that year. They were looking for a less conspicuous vehicle, and while Brock was unloading the Jeep, West shot Phelps twice. Back in Georgia, 4 days had passed before anyone knew anything had gone wrong at Corpsewood Manor. A friend of Scudder and Odom stopped by for a visit, and after discovering the gruesome crime scene, raced into town to notify the police. Deputies from the Chattooga County Sheriff's Office were at Corpsewood within the hour, and entering the house, they found blood-stained walls, overturned furniture, and bullet casings. Sheriff Gary Connell called in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the State Crime Lab. Corpsewood Manor was once again under siege, but this time by a throng of police and forensics investigators. Those who searched the house that day described a crime scene like any other: satanic statues and paintings, whips, chains, a woman's wig, pornography, vials of LSD, and human skulls. Meanwhile, Brock had begun hitchhiking back home after he and West had a falling out in Texas. Police in Louisiana recovered Scudder's abandoned Jeep, and after a license plate check connected the vehicle to Chattooga County, gave Sheriff Connell his first lead. And shortly after, one of the witnesses confided in McConnell. He then immediately issued arrest warrants for Brock and West. Afterwards, perhaps feeling remorseful, Brock returned to Georgia and turned himself into the police on December 20th, and West did the same in Chattanooga, Tennessee on the 25th. West made it to Missouri before deciding to reverse course and head back east, and on Christmas Eve, passing through Chattanooga, he ran out of gas. Penniless and exhausted, he walked through the rain into a highway lounge where he found a police officer and confessed his crimes. Eventually, West was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to death, while Brock pleaded guilty and received 3 consecutive life terms. And with that came the end of the strange and bloody story of the Corpsewood Manor Murders, but many questions would remain. At the trial, West and Brock recounted the night's bloody events. According to case material, West claimed the murders were an act of revenge for the embarrassment suffered by Brock when he had allowed Dr. Scudder to perform oral sex on him during an earlier visit. The case summary continues. At trial, however, West contended the crimes were the product of hallucinations resulting from Dr. Scudder having spiked their wine with LSD. They claimed after binding and gagging Scudder in his pink room, the professor eerily said, "I asked for this," before being killed. Chillingly, the professor had a portrait of himself done months prior to the tragedy in which he is pictured gagged with bullets in his head. And because Scudder was a Satanist and openly gay, bigoted rumors have circulated about him and owed him since their death. Chattooga County Sheriff Gary McConnell once told the Atlanta Constitution that robbery was probably 50% of the motive, the rest likely the devil worshipping and homosexuality. It didn't help that at the trial, West said of them, "All I can say is they were devils and I killed them. That's how I feel about it." The bloody tragedy at Corpsewood Manor in 1982 has become something of a satanic sex-fueled myth, but could it be perhaps the prejudice against the victim's sexual orientation and religious beliefs were really at the center of it all? Stories began to circulate about the couple's unusual homestead, probably helped along the fact that it had an ominous name such as Corpsewood Manor. And even before fire destroyed most of the non-brick portions of the building, people began to say that the place was haunted. Whether Corpsewood's alleged paranormal activity was due to the brutal murder of its inhabitants or the devil worshipping that supposedly went on beforehand depends on who you ask. Even to this day, those who visit the Corpsewood Manor say they hear the gunshots, the barking of dogs, or even the invisible strains of a golden harp, Scudder's beloved harp, that was too large for his murderers to cart it away with the meager handful of possessions they stole before fleeing the scene of the crime. And those who take a brick from the crumbling remains of the building are said to be cursed for life.
Wow.
And that is the story of the Corpsewood Manor Murders.
Well, I don't get it. You know, these guys were out there on their own, doing their own thing, happily. Sounds like they were having a hell of a time. I bet they threw some outrageous dinner parties.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure they did. And unfortunately, though, those parties were to be the end of their demise.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. So I appreciate you taking that trip with me.
Sure.
That'll take us to the end of our recording week. As always, you can find us at nerderymurdery.com, where you can find links to everything we talked about, plus pictures of all the subject matter that we've talked about today. You can also find the link to our YouTube. Yes,
we have a YouTube page where we have a playlist for every single Nerdery episode, with videos and how-tos and things like that. So you should check that out. Plus things that we think are funny and some of our work behind the scenes.
Awesome. Appreciate all the work you do on that.
Thank you.
You can also find the link to our merchandise where if you wish to show off your nerdery and murdery fandom, you can certainly find products there where you can go show off. And you can also find the link to our Patreon where if you wish to become a donator to the show, help us keep going. There are costs that are associated with the show, so we appreciate each and every one of our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It helps us and helps others find our information that they may be looking for. So at the end of this week, that takes us to the end. And with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.